Hey guys, Bipolar Barbie here. Today I wanted to talk about my fears. What am I most afraid of? Now I guess I have some pretty common fears. I am terrified of heights. I am terrified of the ocean. I'm terrified of what may lurk beneath murky waters. If I can't see the bottom of it, it's not for me. I can't do it. I will just literally have the most massive panic attacks. And there's also the fact that I've almost drowned a couple of times in the ocean, which is not helpful, even as a surf lifesaver and someone who can swim. It's still a really frightening experience to be so close to shore and not be able to get there and just be completely exhausted, have waves crashing down on you. And I think the only thing I can compare that experience to is being mentally ill in itself. The overwhelming waves of emotion and depression crashing down and pinning you down under the water and you can't breathe. I'm also terrified of pelicans and birds in general. I got eaten by a pelican when I was like 4 years old. It literally, the whole beak, I was in its mouth. Like, it was literally gonna eat me. Like, I touched its like tongue and I was like in its throat. So I'm scared of birds. I'm also have this thing with like feathers. It's like, I don't know, they're diseased or something. I just can't touch them. Don't touch me with a feather. It's like, it's not my thing. But what am I most afraid of? I think I have two really prominent fears, and that is the fear of failure and a fear of not being good enough. Overwhelming feelings of inadequacy, and I think they go hand in hand, but the difference is my fear of failure has more to do with me attaching my self-worth to success and this very rigid and narrow idea of what success is. And I guess borderline personality disorder really influences that greater sense of self-worth. And then I think in general as a whole, there's this overarching concern that I am terrified of pain. I'm terrified of being like this for the rest of my life. I am terrified of the way that people can make me feel, how vulnerable I can be, how uncomfortable I can be, how sad, how just devastating mental illness can be on your life. So how does the fear of failure come about? I guess I was only ever validated for my successes, and I had a lot of successes. So that's what I attach my self-worth to. And when I started failing, when I stopped being successful in the way that I defined it, I found it really hard. It was really, really difficult for me, and my self-worth just absolutely plummeted. Suddenly I wasn't a good person. I wasn't a productive member of society. I was nothing. I was nothing without my titles, my awards, and the recognition that went with it. And I think that is really, really sad. But one thing that I've learned about that in my lifetime, and particularly in recent times, is that what I fear most is failure. And failure for me is defined by not achieving the things that I wanted to achieve. And I think when you have a fear, you really want to avoid that fear because you want to avoid the discomfort that comes with it. That agonizing, overwhelming feeling that just grows inside to you every step you take to face that fear. And that's hard to overcome. I think people start to practice avoidance. And you know what? Avoidance can be a really good coping mechanism, or it can be really detrimental to your mental health and state of mind. You know, if you are terrified of snakes, you know what? Avoid snakes. If you are terrified of heights, don't go up high. But when what you are scared of is with you every day of your life. I have had such severe anxiety in my life. I'm currently on heart medication, antidepressants for my anxiety, all sorts of different methods and lifestyle changes I've had to make. And I've been living in this constant state of fear. Like my heart rate was at 135, my resting heart rate. Should be 80 or 90. I mean, I was running a marathon every single day because I was so fearful, constantly looking over my shoulder on edge. Any second, something could happen. And I would have a panic attack and break down. Living in that state of fear is completely unhealthy. On a physical level, it's exhausting. It will destroy your immune system and you will suffer this chronic fatigue. I had these mood swings where I would have excessive energy for a week and then, or 5 days to a week, and then I would just be bedridden with fatigue and depression. And that was because of this cycle of anxiety that I couldn't break. And when my doctor started asking me, what on earth are you so afraid of? Living. I was afraid of being alive. I was afraid of the life and the existence that I was living. It was inhumane. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't deal with it. And I was afraid of people. I was afraid of feeling the overwhelming negative emotions that I felt on a regular basis. I was really, really terrified of the way in which people could manipulate me, play me like a puppet on a string. And I was terrified that I would never get to where I wanted to go in life. So aside from treating the physical symptoms of that anxiety to bring me down to a level where I'm not constantly up here in this state of fear where anything could set me off and skyrocket me, bringing me back to a normal level, so anything that made me anxious would just kind of bring me up a little bit, and it would be more of a slow incline on the anxiety radar rather than just this constant, 0 to 1,000 or 1,000,000 in like a millisecond. But one thing that I learned about particularly my fear of failure, my fear of never being successful, never achieving things, is first of all that I needed to redefine my idea of success. Really, as humans, there is one basic thing that we set out to do each day, and that is survive. So if you have survived today, you are a successful person, because success is defined of you achieving whatever it is that you have set out to do. So if the expectation is that you set out to do that one thing each day, you know what? You're a successful person. Anything above that is just a bonus. And if I'm so terrified of failing, what I'm really terrified of is never achieving the things that I wanted to achieve in the first place. So guess what? Avoiding them, avoiding beginning, avoiding doing all of those things for my fear of failure that prevented me from doing them was actually guaranteeing that my worst fear would come true. Because I wasn't even beginning to follow my dreams. I wasn't even starting to do the things that I wanted to do because I was so terrified of not doing them. So I was really perpetuating this own kind of cycle. And I think one of the other really important lessons I learned as far as self-worth is concerned is a borderline, this fear of rejection, this fear of abandonment. The most important lesson I learned there was, guess what? People can't reject you if you never wanted to be accepted in the first place. So if you just kind of adopt this attitude like, you know what? Not one drop of my self-worth is dependent upon your approval of me. I don't need your approval. Then it doesn't hurt when people reject you. And that's one thing I've really learned, with my relationship with my parents. I've just given up hope. I've just really accepted the reality that they are never going to accept me for who I am as a person. And I've just had to be okay with that. And honestly, my life has changed since that point. So I want to ask you guys, what is it that you are most afraid of? And how do you plan to overcome those fears? And really just look at it in this fear-setting point of view, because is your avoidance not practical? Is your avoidance actually guaranteeing that your worst fears will come true? Thanks guys for watching. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Feel free to share, and I'll see you next video.